start with a quick prayer? Yeah. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so here we go.
You have to share your screen, okay?
Yes, I'm sharing my screen. Yeah.
Raghuji, let me do one thing. I'm gonna mute everybody. Okay.
Okay.
And then you have to unmute yourself.
I thought I am unmuted.
Yes, Raghuji, you're unmuted.
Now he's muted, I think.
Raghuji, I can hear Raghuji and speak. So he's unmuted.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So let me start. I just thought I'd give you a quick overview of what I'm going to do today. I'll just give you a quick idea about my background, and then I go on to discuss three critical anchor points of Antaranga Yoga. One is to understand the Chitta. The second is to understand what rasa means, where is dance and theater, and how they're related to Antaranga Yoga. And then some ideas on tapas and swadhyaya, which will become a very key point in the self-reflective process. Yeah. And then we'll discuss the process itself through which we'll be engaging with Antaranga Yoga over the course and the program that we've designed. That's my guru, Krishnamacharya. I've studied for more than a decade with Krishnamacharya and his son Deshikachar, where we went through not just asana and pranayama, but all the yoga shastras, the Upanishads, and so on. I also taught at the Yoga Mandiram, Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram, for more than 10 years. And there were a lot of critical things that we did there, but one of the most important things, I think, is my completing an MS in studying back pain through the biomedical engineering department of IIT Madras, where we studied asana and pranayama and its impact on low back pain. So it's a very well received study. I have written a few books. One is Learning Through Yoga, where I'm talking about a very simple, easy way of understanding the Krishnamacharya way of doing yoga. Then I've applied a lot of ideas from yoga into various organization spaces. So those are the two books, that is the Totally Aligned Organization and Organization Alignment, where I'm bringing in an idea of what's a tensegrity mandala, which is an idea taken from Tripura Rahasyam. And then I've written a book on the Mahabharata and how I'm using it to help people become self-reflective. And I'm a co-founder of Sumedas, the Academy for Human Context, which works on personal growth and process work. A mentor and trustee of Ritambara Ashram, and a co-founder in Quinergy Leadership Academy. Now, one of the key things that I did, this is my guru Deshikachar. During my study with Sri Deshikachar was, we had a series of dialogues with another one of my mentors, which is Professor Pulin Garg from IIM Ahmedabad, who was working with inner process work. And what we did was we studied the Yoga Sutra and looked at what is the parallel between the Yoga Sutra and inner work. And we came up with 60 and odd very important sutras that talk about how psychological transformation happens. And the Yoga Sutra is very, very explicit about it. It's very exciting when you go through this process. And this is a process that is in between what is called Bahiranga Yoga, which is the asana, pranayama, and the other various processes like yama and niyama on the one side, and entering into deeper processes of samyama and samadhi at the other side. So the Yoga Sutra is very clear that unless there is a psychological transformation which enables you as a whole psychosomatic being to become more subtle in the observation of oneself and one's world, entering states of samadhi, dhyana, and all is not possible. Yeah. So there are 60 sutras, more or less, that define this. And you can look at the Yoga Sutra then as comprising of these 4 broad areas. Now, one set of sutras that talk about Bahiranga, one set that talk about the Antaranga Yoga, one set that talk about the Samyama processes, and a set that talks about Nirbija Samadhi. Now, one of the very critical ideas where there is a parallel between psychological processes and what is talked about in the Yoga Sutra is the idea of Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. This is a word that comes in the Bhagavad Gita, and it also comes in Sankhya. It's a very important word because it defines the difference between the way yoga looks at what is generally referred to as the mind and how we normally relate to the word mind. Now, Sankhya talks about 3 very critical aspects of the mind. And these are aspects of the mind which are transformations of the basic Mula Prakriti. So the most subtle is called the buddhi, which is just pure awareness. And then you come to the next transformation called ahankara. This is usually translated as ego, which I don't think is the right English translation. People are now using a word like I maker, which is closer to the word ahankara. This is that part of our mind or our intelligence that's capable of separating out what is mine and what is not mine. And the simplest way of understanding ahankara at work is the way food gets converted from what we eat into that which is nourishing for us and that which has to be kept out. So this process happens with everything that comes in through the senses, and it's based on the awareness level of the buddhi. And then you have the next more gross level called the manas. The manas is that part of the mind that acts through the senses and engages with the world and does the planning, holds an idea of future and past. And this is where we are normally doing all our thinking, so-called thinking and decision making. Now, Vyavasayatmika Buddhi is a process where you bring manas, buddhi, and ahankara into complete alignment. And this is a profound process because then one starts to view the world from the most subtle awareness level of the self. And what is very important for a householder is a Vyavasayatmika Buddhi leads to what's called a Rasatmik life, which means one is able to engage with the world fully, appropriately, without any clinging or craving. This is raga and dvesha. So you enter situations, you act with them appropriately. And this is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita also. Now I'm moving to the next tripod. I hope this is clear. We'll come back to discussions later. So if you have questions, just note them down. I'll give you a couple of seconds before we start on this. Okay, now the second leg of the tripod that Antaranga Yoga works on is the whole understanding of uh, dance and drama and all the arts. So there's a very lovely story about how this whole process started, where Brahma talks to Bharata Muni and says that dharma is going down and we need to enable this to get regenerated in people, and therefore can you create art forms like dance and drama. So he makes a clear design specification. He says these performances must be replete with rasa, and they have to do with things that are very common in what is a human life. And interestingly, the first uh, theater piece that was written by Bharata Muni is the Samudra Manthan. And the Samudra Manthan and the motive of the Samudra Manthan, I think, is the basis of much of Indian artwork uh, and theater and the Puranas and the Itihasas and things like that. So what is a Samudra Manthan? Now, Samudra Manthan, I'm hoping many of you know about it. It's supposedly, or at the superficial level, it's a charcha, a kind of a debate between the asuras and the devas, and they churn the uh, primordial ocean, and from hala hala they finally churn the sea to get amrita. Now, while this is the superficial story, what is critical for us to understand are the more symbolic elements which actually point to how one can start looking at oneself. Now, the sons of Diti represent the mind that looks at the world in fragments. It looks at the world in Vishesha, which means separate, distinct, and fragmented. Aditi is that mind of ours which can look at things as parts of a whole. So we constantly understand relationships, we constantly understand the meaning of the whole, and therefore understand how the part has to engage with other parts. And the subtler this whole movement goes between understanding the part and the whole, the more one goes into levels at which amrita becomes possible. So from the level at which the confrontation of the fragments creates poison, which is hala hala, which is toxicity, one is able to move inward through the process of engagement with one's own mind, which is sometimes fragmented, sometimes holistic, sometimes integrated, and so on, through an observation of it and a subtler and subtler and subtler observation of it. One discovers not only capabilities that are normally not available to us, one also goes down into understanding that which is changeless, timeless, and therefore the source of all delight and ananda. Yeah. Now I'm going to explain to you now the third leg of the tripod. Now this is the Upanishadic dialogue. I'm sure many of you have read the Upanishads. So how are we going to look at Upanishad dialogue? Now, I'm taking one very, very beautiful Upanishad, which is the Bhrigu having discussion with his father Varuni. And the first part of it, which is the essence of the dialogue, has a very interesting meta narrative in it. So the story goes like this. So Bhrigu goes to his father and says, Bhrigur Vaivarunihi Varunam Pitaram Uppasasara Adhihi Bhagavo Brahmeti. So he asks his father to tell him what is the nature of Brahma. Tell me, enunciate to me what is Brahma. And the father says, Tapasa Brahma Vijitnasasva Tapo Brahmeti. he doesn't give a direct answer. He gives a direction and says, go and engage in tapas. And through tapas, you get to an understanding, a clear understanding of Brahman. And one needs to understand the word tapas a little carefully here because it's getting translated into austerity most of the time. Tapas has a lot of shades of meaning. One shade of meaning is dhyana. The other shade of meaning is to hold one's senses in balance. The ability to inquiring deeply is also part of tapas. And all of these processes create a certain heat in the system, which leads to a ripening or a maturing of the entire psychosomatic being. And this ripening and this heat is because one stops the normal engagement, which is in a sense mindless engagement with the world. One gives in to deeper triggers, which are not really a mindful way of responding to the world, compulsions, and so on. So tapas, which is a form of observation of oneself and of one's world, leads to vijnana. And then Bhrigu comes up saying, Annam Brahmeti Vyajanat. The father listens to him. There's a small discourse. Bhrigu knows that he is not really understood the whole. So he peels the onion in a sense and asks the question again, no? Tell me what is Brahman? And the father repeats the same sentence. He says, Tapasa Brahma Vijijñasasva Tapo Brahmeti. So the son goes again, and through making his observations more and more subtle, and therefore his being more and more subtle, he comes up with the other answer. So he says, Pranam Brahma. Then he says, Mano Brahmeti, Vijnanam Brahma, and then goes down to Anandam Brahma. Now, what is interesting is this Upanishad then starts by saying Annam Nanindya, which means it's not a process of letting go or making the next subsequent process somehow more dominant, but it's an entirely inclusive thing where the very physical reality is to be respected and worked with. Okay, so these are the three legs of the tripod of what is Antaranga Yoga. Now, through this process, what one learns to do is what in the Yoga Sutra is called dhyana. It's very interesting that in the Yoga Sutra, the way to achieve psychological transformation is just a deep, attentive observation of the nature and structure of the mind. So by this very subtle observation, you start aligning manas, ahankara, and buddhi. And this leads to deep insights. And each insight then burns the conditioning out. It burns out what are called the seeds of vasana. And one is capable of going deeper and deeper till the mind is capable of samadhi. Okay, so this is the process then that we are going to be offering you through the course and then through a longer program that we have designed. Yeah, we use the Mahabharata as the window for the whole process of Swadhyaya, which leads to an understanding of Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. Now, the Mahabharata, because it's such a beautiful story, it's got so many archetypal figures who play out a huge drama of life, a whole saga of life. And again, the Mahabharata has a very interesting starting point where Brahma is supposed to have asked Vyasa to write the Mahabharata. Again, it's a similar story to the Samudra Manthan. where he says that dharma is going down. Why don't you write a story through which people can understand and relate their own lives to the more dharmic principles, right? And that's why Vyasa starts writing the Mahabharata. Yeah. So what is the process that we're talking about of this self-inquiry or Swadhyaya? We are using the Mahabharata to first experience a story, and through experience the story, one is able to touch rasa. Now, it's important to understand that rasa is different from just emotion. Rasa is a kind of an understanding of how the juices flow inside you. It's a very subtle understanding of the very origins of feeling and how the feeling is moving the entire psyche. To touch rasa, one needs to quieten the mind. And as one reads a story, it becomes easier to do this, because when you engage with life, it's so full of consequences. It's such a powerful process that being able to become reflective as things are happening is very difficult. So we use the story as a mirror, try and understand what the process of self-observation is. And the process is just to discover deeper and deeper inner locations from which one can look at one's own drama. And in an E format, and this is something we've been working with as a group in the Ritambara Rasa group, where we are finding, we're discovering how to use the web to create a Sangha in a sense. So the process that we have worked on is what we are calling look in and voice out. Yeah. So what is the way of working with this now? It's important for us to be able to look at ourselves, look at the drama without getting swayed, without getting into judgmental positions, without saying, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, I should be doing this, this is bad, this is good. To just observe attentively, one has to get beyond the subject-object divide. I'm neither making the Mahabharata or the story something objective to look at the meaning or to discuss other things about it, nor am I getting so inwardly identified that I cannot find a proper distance from which to watch it. So the process is to look at the story, that's the encounter, which is in a sense similar to what the process of Shravanam is, listening process. And then you start self-reflecting. And we are suggesting that the self-reflection is done in a mode where you share your reflection of yourself with other people. Yeah, so you first read a story, we get into a group, each person then shares what is evoked or provoked by reading the story. There's some reflective dialogue, and this, if you listen carefully, will automatically definitely lead to a discovering of something much deeper, which is called the Bhuman, which is a deeper level of being from which one can engage with the world. That is the Nididhyasitavyam. So once I discover that level in the self, I try and hold it. This is called Yogam and Kshemam, which is holding on to this level of depth, or whatever the new observational location I discover of myself. So this will be the way we are going to be working on it. I'll open the space out for discussions now and stop the okay. I'm not too happy with one way talking.
Sir,
Namaste. Called. So I'll be very happy to take calls, and I don't know if Kalyanji wants to moderate it in some way or what. But I'm
Namaste.
Dialogue.
Can
Namaste.
you hear me?
Yes, I can. Aruna?
Yeah, yes, sir. You mentioned about dhyana deeper observation of one's mind to condition the ahankara.
No, you're not conditioning anything.
Can you please repeat that?
Yeah. See, the sutra says, dhyana heyaha tadvrittayaha. What it is referring to is, it first of all says that the mind that is not very subtle and capable of self-observation becomes the ground that holds seed for various kinds of compulsive responses. So if I start observing this whole process, I don't do anything. I don't condition anything. I just observe it very carefully. And this observation, which is a very attentive, quiet observation of the self, creates insights. And the insights is into the nature of my own mind. How does my mind work? How does it engage? Why does it get caught with desires or aversions? Why does it respond to the world in a certain way? This observation, when it becomes subtle, ends all compulsive engagement with the world. Therefore, my life becomes filled with rasa, it fills with joy, it's filled with appropriateness, it is filled with as much of my power as I can bring into any action.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's actually deconditioning oneself, if you want to use those terms.
So, Raghu, this is Kalyan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'd like you to speak a little bit about what will students get out of participating in this course? What do they typically experience? Say they attend this course over a period of, say, 12 weeks or so. What is the kind of transformation that people will undergo and what have you seen happen in your classes previously?
I think some of the people who have experienced this are on the call, so it'll be nice if some of them also chip in. But typically, what we are encouraging people to do is to discover what it means to observe oneself. You know, this classical statement that comes up now, observing without judgment, observing without judgment. What does it really mean? What does it really mean to listen to yourself, listen to the world? Now, this practice of listening is one of the first things that I think people start to understand. And this itself starts creating transformations in the person, in the way they engage with the world, and so on. That's the first level. Now, when you go into deeper levels, which is what the course, the larger program is, where you actually go into a week-long immersion of the Mahabharata, where we take you through processes which are largely from dance and theater, and a lot of Yoga Sutra reflective dhyana kind of processes. This is not dhyana of sitting down. This is a dhyana which is dynamic, where you're observing yourself in various forms of action. So this teaches you how to really look at your life as you're engaging with life. And this is Antaranga Yoga. So you're engaging with life, you're engaging in a way that is self-reflective. And this process creates many transformations within. And the understanding of the Mahabharata, especially the understanding of the 5 Pandavas and what their actions are, where it comes from, not only gives me a way of a lens through which I can understand my life, it also gives me a lens through which to understand the world around me. And differentiate between when am I acting in a dharmic way, when am I not acting in a dharmic way. And of course, this will enable you to, create your own groups, work with your own, if you're a teacher, for example, if you're a yoga teacher or if you're a coach or something like that, you learn how to create spaces for contemplative conversations, help other people to start engaging in a self-reflective way. So you'll actually learn a whole new aspect of yoga, which I don't think is very prevalent right now.
Yeah, so that's important. So one question that has come up is, does one have to be a yoga practitioner in the sense of the Bahiranga yoga in order to take your class on Antaranga yoga?
No, not necessarily. Of course, it will help because these are all parts of one integrated idea of self transformation. One of the things to keep in mind is that yoga does not separate the mind and the body. So, unless one also works with the body, the shifts in the mind don't get anchored. So, for example, if I'm eating bad food, which is one of the advices given in the word tapas, no, is to eat the right food. If I'm eating the wrong food, then it will trigger processes in me which are more rajasic or more tamasic. And therefore, the sattva guna, which is so important in self observation, will be more difficult to evoke within me. If I do exercises, then whatever it is, just walking or whatever exercises you do, you cleanse your body toxins every day. Again, that will help you to keep the rajasic and the tamasic tendencies down and enable the sattvic tendencies to come up. So they are linked, but it's not a necessary condition. I think I'm hoping that through understanding Antaranga Yoga, people understand Bahiranga Yoga much better. Because the other way, I don't think is possible.
Hey, hi, my name is Shankar. I can add to what Raghu said because I have gone through these courses and I've known Raghu for a long time. So one, I'm about 60 years old. I'm an engineer, MBA, been in IT services, retired now. Okay. One, for me, it has given me, I mean, all of us, very fact that most of us in here in this call, essentially because all of us are on an inward journey, on an inward growth to discover who we are, etc., in a true Indian spiritual tradition. But at least in my case, and I've seen it in many people's cases, we go off in many directions. We find something, we find it interesting, we pursue it, and then we find something else and we pursue it. What these set of courses have done for me is to give me a conceptual framework with a certain confidence that yes, there are many pointers that are saying that this will work. Hence, I can adopt this framework, this set of ideas and thoughts, which I'm calling as a framework, that gives me the confidence to go ahead and say, okay, I think I am willing to take this path. I can invest further within myself, practices, and take it forward. That's the first. So I have a conceptual framework. Two, as I have followed through on some of these as a practice, as I see the teachings resonating and actually helping me discover a deeper part within myself, it gives me the confidence to pursue, this is what we discussed here, it is making sense. And it gives me the confidence to follow through. That in a very fundamental sense is very important, at least has been for me, and I think could be for many people. So these are, I would say these two are very fundamental things for me. One, to have a framework that I'm confident of to follow through, and two, having a certainty when something I discover within myself, I can see the resonance of that or a pointer to that in these teachings. I hope that helps.
Very
Thanks,
good.
Shankar.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, namaste.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, Raghu, I thought I'll just share because we have a few trainers from the Yoga Day group also.
That's right. What we tried for the International Yoga Day. Yeah, great.
Yes. So I'm also part of Ritambara, and I thought the initial thing I would like to share is my own experience with respect to this inner work, because I came in touch with these processes and initially attended the programs, and my life was in a very transition point. And what I could very shortly summarize about my experience is that at that point, it helped me get in touch with deeper aspects of what am I struggling with and make sense of where I was in life, and really helped me to tap into a lot of inner strength. So that's to just put it in a nutshell. But beyond that, in the context of this call and the course, so we had this idea of trying out in the online format a combination of Bahiranga Yoga and Antaranga Yoga for the last Yoga Day 2019. And so Ritambara had an initiative where we reached out to trainers from different countries. And finally, we had about 19 trainers from 14 countries who were mentored online by Raghu and the Ritambara team to facilitate some of these processes. So we picked up 2 themes from Yoga Sutra, Ahimsa and Karuna. And so designed a practice for the first hour, which is a Behiranga practice, Asana Pranayama. And the second hour, we were mentoring all the trainers on how to engage with certain curated stories from Mahabharata and how to engage with them in a self-reflective manner. So over a course of 2 months, finally during the week leading up to the yoga day in different parts, we had over 30 events happening across these 14 countries by these trainers. And some of them are here from US and Germany. They've been, so I would like to invite them also to maybe share their experience of how, because for them it is a very new thing, just 2 months of getting orientation and then facilitating the course. I was able to do some of these processes, which is just about 1 hour, 1.5 hours, in not just in India but also in Turkey and Bhutan. And initially there was a doubt whether these stories will appeal to a different audience who are from a different culture. But surprisingly, I could find a lot of resonance even within the group, because the group was so diverse and everyone could relate to the characters and the energies of the characters. And it's a very, we still have it ongoing. Even after the yoga day, every month we are having, today evening we are having another call. So we come together, discuss these stories from the Mahabharata in a like a contemplative dialogue and see what it is evoking in us and what can we find out more about our own patterns by engaging with this in this kind of a manner. So it's been a very exciting experience, and it's an ongoing initiative from Ritambara. I think Manuela is here from Germany. She's a very senior trainer, student of Sriram sir.
There is, excuse me, there is a question on the chat window.
That's right.
If you don't mind, I'm going to read it, okay?
Sure, we'll take it. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So this is from Sakshis. How do we find a balance in self-development and grihastha ashram? The calmer you become internally, the more you become a misfit in corporate settings. How do you make a choice between what you want to do and what you're supposed to do? Those are the 2 questions, Raghu, for you.
That's a very interesting question, Kalyan. Thanks, Sakshi, for that. A lot of my work is actually in application of yoga in corporate settings, in NGO, whatever. So many, different types of organizational settings. We have to remember 2 things, Sakshi, here. One is that yoga has a very wide application, and they're called different kramas, which means different intelligent ways of enabling you to learn yoga. And Krishnamacharya would talk very clearly about differentiating yoga that is meant for a grihastha and yogic practices that are meant for people who are on a more ascetic path. Yeah, and the Mahabharata becomes a very central text for us, because the Mahabharata was written in the initial dialogue I was telling you between Brahma and Vyasa. There is also a counter questioning. Vyasa doesn't simply accept to write the Mahabharata. And there Brahma points out that the most important ashrama in life is grihastha ashrama. People in grihastha ashrama find it very difficult to find time for practices. And if the grihastha ashrama person does not find the way to become the best that one can be, to be really powerful, to be dharmic in life, the entire social context will start losing its ground. And the Mahabharata was written for that. And all the practices of yoga are meant to enable me to discover resources in me which I have not discovered before, keep my body tuned in a way that I can engage. And after having engaged with something with all my intensity, my mind doesn't gather residues from it. My mind doesn't start clinging to things or craving for things or being in retrospect, regretting, nothing. So the entire practice helps me to be so focused on action at that point of time when it's required, that I'm very powerful. It also enables me to later ask a very, very simple question, which is from the Bhagavad Gita. In doing what I'm doing, what am I really doing? This question leads to a self-reflective process of going inside, understanding the roots of my behavior. So every time I do this cyclically, and this is where the Brigu dialogue becomes so beautiful. Yeah. It's not that at any point of time I've discovered the truth. I, at this point of time, discover something, act from it with all my intensity, sit back, reflect on this action, discover something about myself, discover something about the world, and keep discovering deeper and more powerful grounds to act from. That's the process of Antaranga sadhana. And it is not in any way, I haven't seen anybody who's been through it, and I've had thousands of leaders go through leadership courses that I run, which is based on the Mahabharata, which is based on yoga. They've all come out feeling more powerful than before. I don't see anybody, so far haven't talked to me about becoming misfit.
Thank you so much. That was very helpful. Thanks, Kalyan.
Raghuji and Kalyanji, namaste. This is Sujata.
Hi, Sujata.
So there is a question from someone else, which Raghu, I feel you should answer.
Yeah.
It's asked, what is the difference between Antaranga Yoga and mindfulness?
Oh, yes, I saw that.
Your pet topic.
My pet topic. Mindfulness is just an English term, yeah. Mindfulness is my ability to pay attention at a point of time to whatever I'm doing. And today it's become a branded product and a branded set of practices. Whereas Antaranga Yoga is a whole process of continuously going in and discovering what my vasanas and samskaras are, and cleansing my mind in a sense of the impact of the vasanas and samskaras, so that my mind becomes as pristine and as beautiful as it can be. So the Yoga Sutra has so many practices which enable one to gain this kind of a psyche. I think mindfulness is a small subset of the whole process, which is part of yoga in my understanding. I don't see any either or. It's not different from in that sense. I think Antaranga Yoga is the foundation, and mindfulness is one aspect of its practice. It's an important aspect, but there's a lot more in the Yoga Sutra than what I find in generally what is taught as mindfulness.
Yeah, we have one more question from Girish ji, saying that Patanjali created 8 Yoga Sutra grouped between Bahiranga and Antaranga. Do you see Bahiranga being the prerequisite and the foundation more relevant, especially for the younger age, and then pursuing towards Antaranga as we mature in age?
Okay. First of all, there are 192 sutras divided into 4 chapters, and each chapter is actually designed to appeal to a different type of mind. So there is no either or. It's not that Bahiranga, then Antaranga, or this or that, except that the Ashtanga Yoga part, which comes in the 2nd chapter, is a holistic way of looking at all the aspects of the self. And I don't think age really matters. The question is, am I serious about my life or not? That's the only question. So anybody who's serious about life, I think, has to gravitate towards yoga practices. And Bahiranga is just another aspect of the mind. So if I don't keep my senses clean, if I don't keep my body healthy, how can my mind function? And if my mind is not really calm, how can I use my senses and my body in its most effective way? So these are just two sides of the same coin. It doesn't matter where you start from. Sooner or later, when you start looking at yourself seriously, you will take all the aspects of Ashtanga Yoga seriously. Because ultimately, the third chapter, for example, is something very important for anybody who's into science. There are lots of suggestions in the third chapter of the Yoga Sutra that talk about how to apply the mind to look at the world around us with acuity. How do you discover the paramanus, how the paramanus act, for example, or how the body functions, and so on. So it's a prerequisite for any excellence in life, whatever pursuit you take. There are other sutras that talk about balam, which is strength and for fighting. So you can apply an understanding and an inner transformation to any aspect of life you want, including going into very deep meditative practices. I hope that's clear.
Yes, thank you, Raghuji.
Thank you. Any other questions you want to draw attention to, or somebody would like to ask something?
Raghuji, namaste. Good morning.
Morning.
Can you dwell on the rasa aspect just a little bit more, because you had talked about how it's not just emotion. That is one of the more powerful things we experience in the Mahabharata immersion, and thereby go on to the other aspects. So can you just detail that a bit more?
Yeah, okay. See, rasa is it's little difficult to speak about it without experiencing it. Let me try. Now, when you look at a beautiful sunset, there are several things that happen to most people. Now, first thing that most people will say is, it's so beautiful, right? And then there'll be a sense of feeling very calm. The colors of the sky seem to impact your mind, and so on. So when the mind becomes very, very quiet, you start experiencing your body, your senses, and your mind in a very subtle form. And in this subtle form, you experience, you can savor your feelings. It's not like an emotion that grips you and then you get caught with it and it compels you into action. It's a very subtle sensing of the beauty of the world around you, the essential feelings that are going on in you. And this, if you quieten your mind, you can experience in a number of things. You can experience in love. You can experience it when you get aroused in anger. You can experience it when you're in fear, and so on. So this ability to sit back and observe the movement of the mind, the first movement of the mind is this feeling of rasa. And therefore, it is not just emotion. It's really the quintessence of emotion in a sense. And it's not difficult for people to experience it. We do experience it, but we haven't given it importance. When you listen to music in a concert, a good musician takes you through various rasanubhavas. A really good theater performance, a really good dance performance, and several moments in life, all of them give you this opportunity to experience rasa. When I'm experiencing rasa, it also means that I'm experiencing the world from a subtle place. When I experience the world from a gross place, I get caught with reactivities. I get caught with anger and grasping and raga and dvesha and fear of death. All of these things happen when I'm experiencing the world in a gross way. But more than this, Rajeshwari, I would say, come and discover, because these are experiential processes. I don't know if it can be talked through.
Yeah. Raghu, there is a question from Anil Surpur.
Yes.
In fact, a couple of questions. So the first question he's asking is, does Antaranga Yoga include the last 3 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga? Considering the concept of tapas, which is part of Yama Niyama, does this course encompass concepts of 1 and 2, and then the later limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. Is that correct? Okay. And then another question is, does Antaranga Yoga include a series of courses which you are offering? If so, how many courses are there, and where do they? What is the structure of the curriculum?
Okay, right. See, Ashtanga Yoga is 8 limbs, which starts from Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. Antaranga Yoga is largely practices in the second chapter that enable the mind to actually be capable of subtle observation. Now, in this is not a linear progression of Yama to Samadhi. It's actually a spiraling movement. The more I am able to do the right, let's start with food as one of the basic yamas. The more I'm able to eat the right food, that makes me more sattvic. The more my asana practice will become more subtle. And one critical statement that Krishnamacharya has often made is, asana also ought to be looked at as dhyana on the body. So pranayama is dhyana on the breath. Pratyahara is dhyana on the way my senses are being used. And dharana is a choice that you make of how you use your mind and so on. So it's a spiraling kind of a movement. I engage with the world in ways that are disciplined, which means in ways that help the sattvic guna to come up. This enables me to use my body and my senses in ways that are more and more meaningful, more mindful, if you want to use that word, which enables my mind itself, when I want to inquire, to be much more calm and relaxed and therefore insightful. And this in turn helps me in my life. So it's a circular kind of a movement. And each time you go in through it, you become more subtle, which is what I'm talking about as deeper ground from which you can engage with the world. That is the Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasitavyam. That's the cycle. Okay. So it's not separated out, right? The second question that you're asking is about tapas, right? Now, yama and niyama are one part of the process of tapas. Doing asana is also part of tapas. Dhyana is also part of tapas. So tapas is not only the physical, nor should it be translated as austerities. The Bhagavad Gita is very clear. Any process where the heat of the body is made excessive will break the pot. Right? And if the heat is not enough, it doesn't allow the psyche to mature and become ripe. So tapas is actually a process of ripening. And it has to be, the practices have to be dealt with respectfully and not made into either an extreme or into indulgences. So that is basically the idea of yama and niyama, but one has to look at tapas also in a slightly more holistic way. And what we are actually offering through Kalyanji's help and all that, and we've already worked with it quite a bit, are a graded set of engagements with us. The first, we are suggesting a 10-hour course where I help you to start looking at the Mahabharata stories in a reflective way. Hari was talking about how we have done this with the group already, and it's worked very well. The second level is to actually experience a very intense process of engagement with the Mahabharata, with understanding the Yoga Sutras in depth. And we will enable you through that to look at the Yoga Sutra. We've now understood how to teach the Yoga Sutra as a self-reflective process, but across the web. So that's the second level, which is a much deeper thing that we can offer you. And then you can go even further, because Krishnamacharya's way of dealing with asana and pranayama is very different from what is normally taught, which includes a lot of self-reflective work, a lot of breathing and things like that. So we're we can offer a whole, much more complete, in a sense, of all the aspects of Ashtanga Yoga, if you like. So we are having a great set of courses which we'll offer.
There's
Is that right, Kalyanji?
Alvin has his hand up.
Yes.
Alvin,
Yes.
can you unmute yourself and speak, please? Alvin, can you unmute yourself? Hello, Alvin. If you
I
wish
can't
to
hear
speak,
anything.
yeah, Alvin, if you wish to speak, you should unmute yourself and speak up.
Kalyan, you can unmute him from your end, no? If you're the host of the thing.
Yeah, technically he is, he
Unmuted
doesn't have
already.
something unmuted and he's raised his hand. So he's on a device where only he can see the video. So
Then can he type in the question or something like others have?
Yeah, Alvin, kindly type in your question, please. Okay, somebody else was speaking. Please, your turn.
Hi, this is Nisha. So I had a
Hi.
comment and a question.
Yes.
So I was part of an IYD team and I hosted a session of Antaranga Yoga this past summer here in California.
Brilliant.
And yes, so this was one of a kind of experience. And I would say there was a question about Antaranga Yoga and Grahastha and I would say this is perfect experience for that because it's a Mahabharata Yudh everywhere, inside and outside, house, office, everywhere. So, and this session it's not just about discussing the story, it was going beyond this of the story and then basically looking into ourselves and being aware or mindful about any kind of emotions or feelings it creates. Probably during the end of the session, I was left with a lot of questions which I'm still holding on to even after 6 months. So, and that's what I liked about this because, it's like you question yourself, not yourself, I don't think that's a correct term, but you question your inner subtle experiences.
You go into a Bhrigu
right.
process, Nisha.
Yes, exactly. So that was my experience on Antaranga Yoga. And the question is, how will this course be delivered? Like, again, it's an online session or is it an in-person session?
The first level is an online, 10 hours online as an introductory process. And then we have a much longer duration thing designed, which will include a face-to-face portion, which will be, I think, a couple of at least 10 days of face-to-face work, and then a lot of work which is self-level work and online work. Okay. We will deliver a lot of the Yoga Sutra things online, but there'll be at least one face-to-face that we suggest for you to really go into the depth of it and understand how to look at Yoga Sutra self-reflectively. Otherwise, it becomes a discourse. Right. And I don't think understanding the meanings of Yoga Sutra helps you in Antaranga process.
Okay.
Raghu, I want to mark the time. We're at the top of the
Kalyan.
1 hour mark, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I just want to say this course is the Antaranga Yoga course. The first 10-hour course is going to begin in January. And it's a 1 hour a week type of course, and the cost of the course is $200, and it's open for registration right now. Now I want to offer a couple of people who wanted to share. Apparently, Hari Prasad had sent a note. So let's take a couple more shares and maybe one question, and then wrap up the webinar.
Have we got something from Alvin as yet, Kalyan?
Alvin has his hand up. But
no, not anything from Alvin.
A question?
No question from Alvin yet. Manuela and Nisha on the call wanted to share their experience on Antaranga Yoga. So have they done that yet? Or
Great.
is it they can if they wish at this time? Manuela and Nisha, please.
Nisha just spoke.
Okay.
Raghuji, there is one question from K. Dave. Can you expand more on Sarvanam, Manan, and
Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasitavya.
Nididhyasa? Yes.
Okay. See, Shravanam is a process of listening. And, there are Tamil texts also that talk about a similar thing. It's actually a process of being impacted by things in the world. It doesn't mean just listening, nor does it mean only listening to a teacher or listening only to a discourse or something like that. Shravanam is really deep listening. Now, once you have absorbed through deep listening, Mananam is the process whereby you sit back and do vichara. The question that I asked, in doing what I'm doing, what am I really doing, and seeing what I'm seeing, what am I really seeing, and so on. And this process is also recommended in the Sankhya. So the Sankhya starts off by saying Vyakta Avyakta Nya Vijnanam. So this is a process of going inward, looking at what is the Vyakta, which is the manifest, looking at what is the unmanifest, which is largely your own processes of looking at something. Why do I get attracted to something? Why do I not get attracted to something? Why do I give a meaning of a particular thing in a particular way? And so on. These are all processes of Mananam. And of course, reading the Mahabharata, reading the scriptures, or reading the Yoga Sutra helps you to do the Mananam in ways that are much more structured and much better directed, which is what Shankar was referring to in the beginning. Nididhyasitavyam is once I've had an insight into myself, I have to transform the way I live. I have to transform the way I engage with people. I have to transform the way I engage with objects. That is Nididhyasitavyam. So I move from one level of subtle, meaningful experiencing of the world and myself to the next. Because this level will lead to its own ways of engaging with the world. I have to reflect on that again until I come to a state of experiencing the world in Ananda, which is what Bhrigu does through the process. And when I experience it in the state of Ananda, I'm also in touch with something changeless within me. So that's the process.
Okay, I think we should wrap up unless there are any final questions. There's a question on how much is the cost of the advanced courses and what is the duration. So we are still working on the costs of the advanced courses, etc. We will be advertising all the courses and the costs and durations and so on very shortly. But the first course is about 10 to 12 weeks long, and it costs $200. It's a very good place to begin. All right, very good. So, Raghu, if, any final words, and we can wrap up, please.
So this has been brilliant, yeah. I mean, this is the first time I'm engaging with something like this across the world, and I'm really thrilled that it's possible. And very grateful to you, Kalyanji, for having organized it and taken the trouble. And Siddhi, of course.
Can you answer one question, if you don't mind? I was asking if you can give us some guidelines on sattvic diet, please.
So that's a whole discourse by itself. But just a couple of suggestions. One is, if you have a really good Ayurvedic doctor close by, he's the best person to check with, because sattvic diet is not a prescription, that is for everybody. What a good Ayurvedic doctor will do is he will take your Nadi Pariksha and tell you what kind of a Prakriti you are. What is your particular combination of sattvic tendencies, rajasic and tamasic tendencies, and prescribe to you food which is appropriate. But in general, a sattvic food is, not very high amounts of grain, lots of vegetables, not too much of fried stuff, things like this. And if you're still in touch with your grandmother, she will tell you exactly what, most traditional Indian foods, especially what the family has been following, would have been worked out in a way that is Ayurvedically relevant and important things for that family to keep in touch with, and so on, will also be there, because some of these are things that run in the family, right? So all these family memories are also very important. So if you're in touch with some of that, that will be great to fall back on. Yeah. Otherwise, these are some general rules. The other thing to do is to, observe yourself when you eat things and be a little mindful of the process, and you'll discover what is sattvic for yourself. Yeah, I'm hoping this very simple tips will help.
Excellent. So I think we've come to the end of this webinar.